So my whole point of this video and why I'm actually making it is I want to walk you through the first few steps that I took when I discovered that I had anxiety. I want to show you what I did to start that journey of healing. And I really hope that this inspires you to start your own journey or carry on in your own journey and maybe add a few steps that you haven't taken so far. Feel free to steal these steps. These are yours to have. Take them, run with them, and do what you can with them as long as you keep moving forward. So when I realized that I was suffering with anxiety and depression, I made a decision just not to let it hold me back anymore. So I would actually say that at that point in my life, I had crippling anxiety and I was afraid of everything. I mean, literally everything. I couldn't drive, I couldn't talk to people. I was afraid to even step out of the house and go for a walk around the block. And I think the worst part was that I felt really isolated. I felt like I was the only one going through this and that I had nobody to talk to and that nobody would understand. And I think this is where my passion for opening up this conversation comes from. Because if I had known other people that had gone through it and learned how to manage their anxiety, I wouldn't have felt so helpless at that time. The very first thing that I did was educate myself. I picked up as many books as I could about anxiety. I'm an avid bookworm, so that came naturally to me. I just wanted to find out as much as I could about anxiety, about where it comes from, what it does to the body, and understand how it works and why it does what it does. And because there's just so much to learn about anxiety, this is something I still do on an everyday basis. I'm still learning and still gathering information, and I put it all into my ebooks, which you can find in my Etsy shop. But doing this and learning about anxiety and how it affects you mentally and physically gave me a huge understanding of what was going on. And it helped me understand the symptoms that I was experiencing. So things like feeling jumpy all the time came from that flood of stress hormones that was constantly in my body. And the exhaustion also came from that, because after all of that stress, my body was just tapped. My body was just so tired and exhausted because it was constantly in fight or flight mode. So once I understood why what I was going through was happening, I could create certain strategies and techniques to sort of fix those things. So something I would do would be like make sure that I had calm time, and I would call it my detox time. So this is where I would just take some time to just allow my body to relax and de-stress, especially if I had a very tough week or a very tough day. And this helped me so much because it meant that that anxiety didn't build up on itself, and I actually ended up having fewer panic attacks as a result. So the second thing I did was to take some time to figure out what my anxiety triggers were. Now, if you don't know, anxiety triggers are basically things that would trigger your anxiety. So it would be things that you would see or experience or hear even that would make you tense. Your body ends up tensing up, you flood with stress hormones, you go into that fight or flight mode, and this can actually trigger a panic attack or some very strange behavior that is usually out of your character. And the thing is, I can't tell you what your anxiety triggers are, because anxiety triggers can be very specific for each of us. So something that used to trigger me, for example, was having an empty fridge. I don't know why, but it was just a weird thing that whenever my fridge was empty, when it was the end of the month and I hadn't done grocery shopping, and I would open my fridge and it was just a little bit too bare, I would start freaking out. The worst thing is that if something stressful actually happened after that, it would trigger a panic attack so easily. Now, since then I've worked on it, so it's not something that triggers me anymore, but that's just an example of how weird anxiety triggers can be. So what I want you to do is keep a journal and keep a record of things that are triggering your anxiety. Now, these are things that, when they happen, cause a rush of adrenaline in your system. Maybe your body tenses up, your shoulders tense up, your neck starts getting sore, your heart rate goes up, and you become really sensitive to things around you and the things people say. Now, these are all symptoms of anxiety, so you would look out for these. So keep track of all of the things that have triggered your anxiety. Write that down in your journal. Nobody else is going to read it. It's just for you. Be as specific as possible. Elaborate as much as possible. Think of this as a kind of a little science experiment for yourself. Now, I would say do this for about a month or two so that you have enough data, so that you have enough information to work on. Then take some time, sit down and go through this journal and try and find patterns. So what you're trying to do here is find similar things or the same thing that keeps triggering your anxiety again and again and again. Now, when you know what your anxiety triggers are, you can start working on. And by working on them, I mean you can start desensitizing yourself to that scary situation. You can start rationalizing your mind out of feeling that anxiety for that scary situation. So the third thing that I did was to learn what self-care really meant for me and for my anxiety. Now, don't get me wrong, I love bubble baths and I love face masks and I love painting my nails even though they're not painted right now. I love doing girly things, and yes, that counts as self-care. But when it comes to anxiety, I think self-care takes on a whole different meaning. So I like to think of self-care as things that help me calm my anxiety down. So it'll be things like I would take a day or an evening just to detox. I would switch my phone off, put some music on, and sit with a cup of tea and just watch the sunset. And I would empty my brain and try not to think about anything that's stressing me out at the time. And I allow my body to just relax and de-stress and get rid of all of that stress hormones that's built up in my system. So it's things like that that really help me manage my anxiety levels and help me bring it down to a point where I can start taking on challenges that would normally scare me. So another thing I like to do is to find areas of my life where I feel like I'm holding myself back because of my anxiety. Then I make a conscious effort to really push myself past that. I make it a personal challenge and I take it personally. I want to push myself past that wall that anxiety has put up for me. Now, this is an incredibly empowering and therapeutic exercise, and I really highly recommend it for anyone, whether you're battling with anxiety or not. Try this out. That anxiety that you experience really holds you back from living the type of life that you want to live, but it doesn't need to. So you need to show your mind that there's no point in being scared of that situation anymore. The fourth thing I did that really helped me learn how to manage my anxiety and pull through it was to learn how my anxiety manifests. Now, the thing is, there are hundreds of different types of anxiety, and the one that you might be battling with might be different from the one I'm battling with, might be different from the one my neighbor's battling with and your neighbor's battling with. It can manifest in so many different ways. So that's why it's important to understand how your personal anxiety manifests. So learning how my personal anxiety manifested gave me a really clear starting point when it came to learning how to manage it. So I looked at things like how I thought, my thought processes, how I thought about the world, and how I approached certain situations in my life. And a lot of it was really twisted because of my anxiety. So I started addressing those issues to see what would happen. And one of the ways my anxiety manifested was that I became really afraid to talk to people. So one of the things I did was to challenge myself to actually do that. When they were ringing up my groceries, I would start small talk. I would compliment their earrings or makeup or whatever they did extra that day and spark a very tiny little conversation that would probably last about a minute. Then I would say my goodbyes and go. But that tiny step helped me overcome that fear of talking to people. The other thing I did was I started getting used to the idea of failure. Now, another way my anxiety manifested was I was terrified of failure to the point where I would never try new things. I always had this idea that someone would shout at me if I failed or if I did something wrong. And I think part of being a grown-up is you realize there is nobody to shout at you. Yeah, there might be repercussions, maybe a fine here or something there. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for your decisions, your choices, and the things you choose to do. So I had to get used to that idea of failure. Now the thing is, failure isn't a bad thing. Failure is an awesome thing because when we fail, we learn something. We learn how to do it better, or we learn about ourselves. So as part of my recovery, I learned how to handle failure. So my challenge to you is to find out what's holding you back. What are you afraid of? What is your anxiety telling you that you can't do? That's really not such a big deal. So set yourself up a few small challenges that will tell your mind that you don't have to be scared of that thing anymore. And keep going at it. Keep working at it until you push through that wall and that fear. I know a lot of people are terrified of just talking about having anxiety. Remember that just because people around you aren't talking about it doesn't mean that they aren't going through it too. I want to encourage people to talk about it. I want to encourage you to talk about it. Talk about it with your friends and family, because when we talk about it, we encourage them to start talking about it. And when they can see that they're not alone in going through whatever it is they're going through, then they can feel strong enough to get the help that they need. So these are just a few things that I did to begin my journey of healing through my anxiety and learning how to manage my own anxiety. Now, I'll be going deeper into these steps and other steps that I took to help me manage my anxiety and learn how to really overcome it in the next few videos. And if you're interested in those, then hit that subscribe button and that bell notification so that you get a little notification when those videos do come out. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel grow. And it also lets me know that you enjoy videos like this so that I can bring you more videos like this.